I am Grady Culhane. Welcome to Sunday Journal. I'm joined today by a special guest from the Family Table Collaborative. Do you mind just introducing yourself for our listeners?
Thank you for having me, Grady. My name is Jeni Wheeler. I'm the co-founder and director of the Family Table Collaborative. We're located in the old Riverway Lobster House in 1338 Mass 28 in South Yarmouth.
Mm-hmm. And thank you so much for having this conversation with us. Really appreciate you being in studio.
It's exciting to be here. Kind of exciting to do radio and video all at the same time.
It is true. We're trying something new, and as well now we're starting to move away from the bigger parts of COVID. Still with us. I don't want to talk like it's fully over, but the emergencies are mostly past. So I wanted to ask you more as well, just for people who might not have been familiar with previous segments that we did with you. Do you mind just introducing more about your organization, what you guys do?
Absolutely. So we started as a rapid response to COVID, providing nutritious, delicious meals to anyone who needed a little extra love. That was kind of just our premise. COVID hit. 2.5 weeks later, we did our first distribution, and it wasn't any grand plan. It was just we knew food was going to be an issue. We knew good food was going to be an issue. And so fast forward 3 years since we started, over 3 years. And last Thursday, we tipped our 120,000th meal into the community.
Wow.
And last year alone, we rescued and put back into the community over 25,000 pounds of fresh produce. And we kind of have done all of that. We've grown from a rapid response into a full social enterprise looking at the full cycle of food.
Mm-hmm. Now, when we were off microphone, I asked you more about how's the new location treating you with But as you've informed me, that it's actually been 2 years that you've been in there now, so it's not really new. But
it still feels new. I have a hard time believing that it's actually been 2 years, but it was 2 years last month. And I knew, no pun intended, that when we moved into Riverway, we were going to need to kind of grow organically. It's a 9,000 square foot building and an almost 2-acre property. And so, that's really what we've been doing for the last 2 years. And it's allowed us to really do more with, taking in more food and processing more meals, and then again getting into basically we take in. So let me back up here.
Sure.
We're partnered with all of the local farms, or many of the local farms, the Fishermen's Alliance, the fishing and shellfishing industries at large, and then Whole Foods Market is our newest community partner. And we take in over 100 cases of food from them a week. So how do we do that? We do that with the help of I'm blessed to helm Cape Cod's, one of Cape Cod's largest most amazing volunteer armies. We started 2022 with 150 volunteers. We ended 2022 with 400 volunteers. We ended January of 2023 with 500 volunteers, and we are now north of 550. So it really does take a village to do what we do. So we take in all the food, we go through it, figure out what we can use for the meals we're going to produce for the community. Then whatever we're not going to use but we can salvage, we clean it up and put it right back out into the community through agencies that interface directly with families. We have a very tight relationship with the Health Ministry of Cape Cod, Michael Messinas. We feed about 200 people a week through just what we send to them. So then whatever we can't salvage goes to feed the pigs and the chickens, and whatever they don't eat goes right back into the ground here on Cape Cod as compost. And the reason why all of this is important is because more than 40% of all food in the United States doesn't make it to a table. So our focus on waste reduction, increasing sustainability, has a direct impact also on things like climate change and how we're taking care of the planet. Because depending on the research you actually listen to, somewhere between 11 and 25% of all carbon emissions comes from food waste. And so, that's why we have looked at nutritional security instead of just food security, and looking at the entire cycle of food, because we have to do better. We simply have to do better.
So there's been a lot of food security-based news as of late. We had the end of federal-based SNAP benefits very recently.
Yes.
The state did decide that it was going to pick up some of the slack on that one, essentially,
Yep.
at least for a little while longer into the summer. Do you have any comments about that and how that impacts your what you're doing?
So we know right now there's a couple of things that are going on. We know that families are struggling. The two groups that we see the most of are families and seniors. So seniors because they're on fixed incomes, right? And families because the cost of living on Cape Cod is much higher than the state average. And unfortunately, the salaries are actually lower than the state average. We have a significant lack of public transit. And so all of those things, and we all know we have a housing crisis happening. And so in addition to that, people with families may also be dealing with childcare and things of that nature. So that dollar is being stretched really thin, thinner here on Cape Cod even than some other areas. So we're seeing that in the effect of, and this is kind of, we've seen this come out of COVID, we saw it during COVID and it's perpetuating, is that people haven't really gotten back on their feet. So people who never needed assistance and who, to be perfectly honest, may not qualify for any assistance, but are still struggling to survive the economy on Cape Cod, it's a very real thing. And so that's where we're seeing our numbers actually have started to spike again. We put out 750 meals last Thursday. That's a holiday distribution under our normal circumstances, and that's becoming more of our norm. 2 weeks earlier was, I think 650 2 weeks earlier was 700. Like we're kind of starting to fall in that 650 to 750 as the norm, which is significantly higher than it used to be. So we're seeing those ramifications. The ripple effect is, and often, unfortunately, it takes a lot for people. There's a lot of stigma. So, it takes a lot for people to ask for help. And so recognizing you need help is often coming after you really need help. Like you really needed help a while back, and it takes a while to get to that, to determine that you're willing to actually say, okay, I need help. And unfortunately, the reality is at the end of the day, why we believe this matters to everybody, or it should matter to everyone, is healthier people create healthier communities. So giving nutritious, delicious meals, making good food, quality food, a God-given human right should matter to everybody, because you can't possibly function. Food is the number one thing that affects our physical and our mental health. So if we're putting lesser quality, high fat, high salt, high sugar, and high preservatives, highly processed food into our bodies, and then we can't expect a really great outcome. And unfortunately, I like to say when I'm talking about this, it's like the 15 seconds of Debbie Downer. We are the unhealthiest developed country in the world. And unfortunately, food is a big factor for that. We have no reverence for food, and we have no reverence for time. And so we've become a country built on convenience. So that's why I say that food security, there's a lot of great work being done in the food security space on Cape Cod. But food security is dictated almost solely by economics. Nutritional security is dictated significantly by convenience. We're used to grab and go. We're used to instant gratification. So the problem is, in order to change that, in order to move the needle on nutritional security, we believe it comes down to the concept of, do you give a man a fish or do you teach him to fish? We believe you have to do both. If you're going to create sustainable change, you have to do both, because the microwave is the number one cooking device in the country. And so people are used to that grab and go. They're used to being able to get prepared food. Unfortunately, more often than not, it's highly processed, and back to that high in fat, salt, sugar, and preservatives. So what we're doing is we need to meet you where you're at to create sustainable change. Well, we mean that both physically. There's, like I said, there's a lack of public transit. So we have to be able to get to you. If you need us to get to you, we need to be able to get to you. And then the second thing is we need to be able to provide you with prepared food, because that's what you're used to, but less processed, better nutrition, better quality prepared food so that we can show you do in fact like more vegetables, more spices, a wider variety of food than what most people in the United States are used to. And then once we get your buy-in, then we can do the educational piece of help you help yourself. So then we can do the classes and things like our spice program where we can give you spice packets that help you cook and help you provide yourself with better meals.
Mm-hmm. So this has become an intervention for my TV dinner based diet, is what I'm now deducing here. But in real
are you feeling attacked?
No, not on Sunday dinner. But you mentioned the classes as well, educating. Do you mind talking more about some of the classes and the ways that you're just providing that information, essentially?
Yeah. So right now we're partnered with the Hyannis Public Library, and we have been for about a year now. Mm-hmm. So every month I do a free online Zoom cooking class where, it's not just that we're cooking something together, because it is literally live time cooking with me, but people can ask questions. It's interactive. Mm-hmm. And so often what we would talk about during the classes is what happens when you're done with fixing this recipe, because a lot of people coming out of COVID, in a really positive way, to be honest, decided they needed to start cooking a little bit more or trying to cook. But it doesn't come naturally to everybody. Not everybody thinks it's as fun as I do. I don't know how that's possible, Grady. Wow. However, in trying to share my love of cooking, what happens is often at the end of the recipe, you're left with what's left. Like there's a lot left over. So I found myself talking about that quite a bit with the people that are on Zoom and talking to me about what they're making. Mm-hmm. And so we started talking about that and talking about things of, what else can you make, or how can you change what we just made into leftovers the next day and make it into something completely different so that it doesn't feel like you're eating the same thing. And that really all came from, let's extend the dollar, right? Like food's very expensive. We saw an uptick of almost 30% during COVID of food costs. And so you certainly don't want to waste it. But unfortunately, back to my comment, there's a lot of waste in food, and that's not positive. So I started finding myself in conversations with the people on the cooking classes of talking through this. So I approached Corey and Larry Egan, the owners of Edible Cape Cod, and we started a column in their quarterly Edible Cape Cod magazine where I'm now interviewing a local chef and I'm highlighting a recipe that they love and they tell me why they love it. And then we cook that, and then I create a secondary recipe with what's left. Mm-hmm. And I'm allowed to add up to 3 additional ingredients, but the goal is like kind of something you likely might have in your house. The goal is not to make you go buy more things. Mm-hmm. And that way we can utilize everything and kind of stretch that dollar, but also get more nutrition.
Very economical. But it is good to know that you're just using stuff that's basically from the cupboard as well.
Yes, we do a lot of that. As a matter of fact, that kind of came about. I did some pandemic cooking classes. Mm-hmm. I avoided COVID for about 2 years before I tested positive. And because of how I tested, I didn't test positive for 9 days in, and when I was quarantining myself because I had traveled for the holidays a little over a year ago. And when I got back, my best friend called and said, 11 of us just tested positive. And so I was somewhat certain I might test positive. And so I quarantined myself because I work with all volunteers. And so I thought I was going to lose my mind because I didn't test positive until day 9. Oh. And so what came out of it was cozy cooking. COVID cooking in cozy pajamas.
Alliteration. I like it.
Is I think what the videos are called. Mm-hmm. So it literally is a series of videos that I did while I was quarantined at home, and I only cooked while in cozy pajamas. Mm-hmm. Because I never get to stay home. During COVID, I was never isolated. I was super careful, but I was never isolated. So I was about to lose my mind, and that's what happened. Cooking with me in cozy pajamas.
A silver lining, sometimes the extreme circumstances we find ourselves in is the mother of innovation. But that is fantastic. You mentioned as well the spice packets. Did you want to elaborate more on that?
Yes, this is something very near and dear to my heart. So, since the beginning, I have, talked about needing to expand what people are exposed to, kind of expanding our palates. I'm very fond of saying, eat the rainbow, and I don't mean Skittles. I want people to really consciously think of eating different colored foods because you get different nutrients, you get different vitamins often in different colors of food. So even though I do this with all the kids when I do kids cooking classes, I actually give them a sheet where they can put up on the fridge. And I tell the parents all the time, I'm not beyond bribery. Like when they hit all the colors, they can come find me, I'll give them a prize. However, but it's also good for adults because it's amazing how narrow our palate is in the United States. And it's not possible to get nutritional density if you eat a super narrow palate. So with that being said, that also applies to spices. And unfortunately, you can't access spice. We don't have things like spice markets in most areas of the United States. So, unfortunately, spices can be incredibly costly. And if you're already economically challenged, are you going to go buy 5 different spices that you're not even sure what they taste like? You don't know if you like them, and you need a quarter of a teaspoon for a recipe. So what I've wanted to do, and you can only access, mainly salt, sometimes pepper. Unfortunately, at most of the free services, those are the only spices you can get. And sodium is a significant health issue, particularly as we age. So, and highly processed prepared food often is already super high in sodium. So if we're giving you something that's high in sodium and then the only option we're giving you is to add salt for flavor, it's very problematic. So spice also dictates a lot of ethnicity. So there's health properties in spice, but spice also, different spices are used all around the world. And so what I wanted to do was create spice packets that can be given out for free with recipe cards so it can help people. It falls on the education side, but it also allows us to help you help yourself so that you can just simply say, okay, this is all you need to do. These are the ingredients, and now you're going to open the spice packet, dump it in, and you're all set. And it helps reduce salt while promoting healthier eating and a more diverse palette of eating. So the Family Table Collaborative is coming out with a spice mix line. It should be out in the next couple of months. It's very exciting.
Well, that's awesome.
To help
Congratulations.
support the mission of the collaborative.
The next time that you are on, we'd love to do a taste test.
Absolutely. It's always the favorite part.
For the Cape Cod Broadcasting, the CapeCod.com taste test is what we're going to be doing next.
100%.
Excellent. Good to know. As well, so it is town meeting season. We're still going through a lot, and a lot of the things on the warrant relate to plastic reduction, especially related to takeout food of that nature. We're seeing a kind of a movement across the nation as well, trying to reduce
Absolutely.
plastics. So do you mind talking a little bit more, elaborating further on like how stuff like that factors in? You mentioned reusing the food. You mentioned but you mentioned containers as well. And now there's another factor for you guys.
Absolutely. It's something we're acutely aware of because as we've moved into looking at the full cycle and addressing the full cycle of food, you pretty much can't look at the full cycle of food and not address things like plastic, right? So And this is a very real situation. So we all know plastic is not good, for the environment. Unfortunately, we haven't had a ton of options, right? We've kind of worked past where almost no one uses styrofoam anymore, and we're kind of past that. And now we're dealing with plastic. And certainly during COVID, you saw massive spikes in plastic because the grab-and-go situation went through the roof, right? There was, for a long period of time, it was very difficult to get packaging. It was incredibly expensive, and pretty much all of it was plastic. And that's if you could get it. Now, I've spent quite a bit of time trying to move us in the direction of compostable packaging. It was incredibly expensive. It is getting better. Also, the quality of it is getting better. But people have to understand, grab and go, microwavable, the microwave is the number one cooking device in the country. And just about anyone that's living in transitional housing only has access to like a dorm fridge and a microwave often. So we're kind of betwixt and between. We're moving closer and closer to doing, well, we are doing more with compostable, but we have to make sure that people can heat in what we're giving them. And the other piece is in moving the quantity of food we move. So it has to be able to be stacked in boxes and hold up to that in order for us to ship it out to the community. So we are actively working. My goal certainly would be that in the next 12 to 18 months that we would be wholly compostable, because they are improving kind of the structural aspect of the compostable packaging.
That is good to hear. I know that you guys are on a larger, not quite commercial scale in the literal sense, but you are dealing with lots of quantity.
Yes, yeah. We're producing pretty much at least 2,000 meals a month at this point in time, in addition to rescuing and putting out over 2,000 pounds of produce a month. So, our production is very high, and that's outside of our marketplace, because in order to help support what we do, we also are open to the public on the weekends. We brought in Wolfie's Bakery. Dale Shabazian has become a great partner with the collaborative in helping us support what we do. We have the Makers Market that's open every Saturday and Sunday, 8 till noon, and you can purchase grab-and-go meals from the collaborative that, again, all of the proceeds go to help support the mission of the collaborative in increasing nutritional security across Cape Cod.
So as well, just speaking of the things that you guys do in general, what is upcoming for the summer? Do you mind just highlighting your biggest events this year?
Yeah, so we actually have our biggest fundraiser is coming up on July 8th. We're doing kind of our first real big fundraiser at the collaborative since we've been there. There's going to be sponsorship opportunities and ticket sales all being released in the next week or so. That's going to be on July 8th from 6 to 10 at the collaborative. We're doing our monthly cooking classes. We're starting to also do a monthly kind of fun event where we just had a trivia night, and it was a huge hit. My right hand, Kelly Schofield, made homemade Detroit-style pizza and all these salads, and then we had a huge ice cream sundae bar, which people loved. And it was a lot of fun, and it acts as kind of a mini fundraiser, but also a community gathering evening. We are looking at bringing the liquor license. We're applying for the liquor license, so our plan is to reopen the tavern a couple nights a week, which will be exciting. And then we have not only the classes, but we're expanding our Makers Market and Wolfie's Hours. We'll be opening at least Saturday, Sunday, and Monday mornings from 8 till noon-ish, if you listen to Dale. Noon-ish.
Noon-ish.
And we are gearing up for quite a few cooking classes. And we will be relaunching our monthly dinner club. It's a little bit of a high-end tasting supper club featuring some local wines and beers and spirits and paired with food. And we have guest chefs and all sorts of things. And it's a really nice way to be exposed to locally grown food products. Just a really nice community gathering of sorts.
That is awesome. So you've been up and running for about 3 years now. What has been some of the biggest obstacles or lessons learned, or just maybe some surprises or curveballs thrown your way in that time?
Well, to be honest, when Harry Henry and I, my co-founder, and I started the collaborative in partnership with the American Culinary Federation, it was that rapid response. There was simply, we knew that, people were being laid off with all of the restaurants, food was going to go to waste, and we were seeking to solve like kind of that immediate issue. But there was no plan. There was no grand plan. What we uncovered in that first year was so much that there was a lot more going on than just COVID. There were a lot of additional issues going on. And nutritional security is a huge gap. And it became clear that that was really where my focus was, is I wanted to make a difference there. But until Jason Sisko approached us about taking over the Riverway Lobster House, Harry kept saying, "Are you ready to file the 501c3?" And I was like, no. Because, there are more nonprofits on Cape Cod per capita than anywhere else in the United States. Like, who wants to do that? Like, that's a lot to take on.
We've noticed quite the density here for
Yes.
this program as well.
And so the thing is that, the reality is my passion is food, but my background is business. I did my MBA at Babson, a focus in social entrepreneurship. I believe heavily in using business to help solve societal issues. And that's really when Jason Sisko approached us, and I give him a huge amount of credit. He is very private. He does not seek the limelight. But when he approached us, it led to a 3.5-hour conversation with me that ended in, I think you should buy the property, and me going, are you insane? I'm like, yet his response was, I believe the property has more to offer the community, and I believe you're the right thing for the community. And that seed allowed me to walk away and really think about what's possible. And that really was, I walked out of that meeting and I called Harry and I said, file the 501c3. I know what we want to do, because going after solving nutritional security on Cape Cod, I believe it's solvable here. We have a lot of natural resources on Cape Cod that a lot of places don't have. But the model of partnering with businesses, with farms, with the Fishermen's Alliance, the model we're building here can be replicated. Maybe not exactly, like the Fishermen's Alliance might not exist in another area, but maybe there are other types of farms. It could be replicated in a lot of ways. And at the core of it, it's about the community. This is by the community for the community. And that, I think, is what makes the biggest difference, is that, 550 plus volunteers, that's how this gets done. Community partnerships, people like in organizations like Whole Foods. And here's the deal. They're doing good by providing us with all of this produce and all of this food, but it also makes sense from a business model for them, because it actually reduces their waste. They don't have to loss out as much of their food as pure loss. They have the ability to donate it to us, because then we can use it. And again, that middle piece of what we're doing, feeding thousands of people really nutritious, delicious meals, is the benefit. So when you can come up with solutions where everyone wins, everyone wins. That's how you find sustainable solutions. And that's what we were going after. So but we didn't know that. We didn't know that when we started, right?
Sure. It reveals itself.
There was, exactly. And that's, I like to say, I feel like we're in iteration 864. We continue to grow, but a big part of growth is being able to listen. So we really have paid attention to the community, and we constantly seek feedback from the community. The community, like I said, this is by the community for the community. So we try and meet the needs of the community where they're at, because that's what needs to happen to create true sustainable change.
Jeni, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation, but I'm afraid that's about all the time that we have. But do you have anything else that you want our listeners to be aware of while I still have you?
Well, we always are looking for more volunteers. So if you're interested in joining us, you can find us at www.familytablecollaborative.org. We are always happy to get additional volunteers. We are always, I hate to say it, but we're always happy to take donations, because what we do is our numbers are climbing. But really, I just wanted to thank you, Grady, for having me. And as always, I feel blessed, incredibly blessed, to get to do what I do. But at the end of the day, again, healthier people create healthier communities, and that's really what this is all about.
All right, Jeni, thank you so much for having this conversation with us. Really appreciate it. And we're just going to close it out here now. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation as well.